If you are new to our channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
It's all about watering. It's August, it's hot, it's dry. We've been dry for a while now. So there's some techniques in which we can water to help our gardens produce. We should have been watering all the time, but we're going to go over the watering aspect of it. And yes, there are some sponsors of this program that devote their companies to watering crops in our garden. Holly's going to go over a couple of go over them briefly, just so we know what they are before we get into the watering aspect of the topic here.
Sure. So one is called Tree Diaper, and so you can get that at treediaper.com. It's a plant hydration system, and basically it's what you kind of think it is. It's like you put a diaper around your plants type of thing. But what it does is it's made of this natural material that holds water, and then it releases it to the plants as needed. So it's kind of like the opposite of a diaper, but it's still a diaper type of thing.
Retains water, then releases it
right,
when it
retains and then releases.
When the soil needs it.
Yep. So that's the Tree Diaper. It's a treediaper.com. Then we have the Plant Booster, which is it's something that's good for hanging baskets, potted plants, whatnot, and it allows the water. It's like a self-watering system that allows the plants to be watered as needed. As
well as the Dripping Springs Oya.
Yeah, the Dripping Springs Oya. And Oya is an older concept. It's an unfinished clay pot with a rounder belly and a short neck. And what it does is that unfinished clay allows the water to seep into the soil, but you bury it. You bury it at ground level, and then that way it seeps into the roots of the plants.
So let's talk about watering here. First of all, we need a schedule. We need to put our systems, whether we do an irrigation system, drip system, one of these systems that we spoke about, or hand water with a watering can, we need to be on a regular schedule. The reason for that is these plants do not do well when they go through a wet period, long dry period. Wet period for 2 days, long dry. It stresses the plant out, the production is not there, and it also can cause problems like blossom end rot on tomatoes.
Right, because with blossom end rot, basically the nutrients are being locked up into the soil. So you need to get on a schedule. So say you're like, I'm going to water Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But say we get torrential rain on Wednesday. Maybe you don't water that day. Maybe you're at work and it rained at work, but you're not sure if it rained at home. This happens to me a lot because I work on way far west. So you want to go home that day if you're supposed to water, and maybe the ground looks a little wet, but you want to go underneath and see if it really, how much it did rain possibly, if it did soak the soil enough a few inches down.
Yeah, even if you hand water, if you put a gallon or 2 gallons of water from your watering can on the soil, it doesn't absorb like a sponge. Sometimes when the soil gets to a point of dryness, it becomes hydrophobic, which means repelling the water. So it takes time in order for the soil to change the structure in order to absorb the water in which you're placing on it or around the plant.
Right. So that's why you want to get on a water schedule, and you want to make sure that you're watering efficiently and you're watering correctly. So with that being said, one is that you got to think about the time of day you're going to water. So it's ideal to either water early in the morning or later on in the evening.
The reason for that is when we water during the peak afternoon hours. Now, you can water whenever. Our schedules are all different. The concept behind the early or late watering is early morning, the plants are still not stressed from the heat. Then it will absorb the water. You can foliar feed. You can water the plant's leaves. It will dry before evening. There's less chance of diseases and bacteria growing on the leaves, and the plant can absorb that moisture. If you water in the evening, the plant is coming out of the stress, going into night, relaxing. They do a lot of growth at night, and then it can absorb the water, and the water doesn't evaporate. If you do during the peak of the day, it will still work. The plants will still absorb, but some of that water will evaporate, especially if you do above ground watering. The atmosphere, the air will pull that moisture away from the plant, and you don't get the efficiency as you would in evening or in the morning. If you go a drip system or a tree diaper or Oya or a plant booster, it's watering directly at the root system at the base of the plant to where it's absorbing into the soil, that is not cascading over the plants or in the air. You're going to get a better return on your watering return on your watering if you do it that way.
Right, and that comes with the watering at the base of the plants because you're getting it right into the soil. A lot of people use those old sprinklers that wave back and forth, and those are a great concept. They're handy to use. and they're simple. But with that being said, you're not. It's kind of like when it rains. You're not necessarily getting it at the base of the plants.
And the problem with some of those rainbow sprinklers is the control of those sprinklers. A lot of people don't care where it goes. They just put it in the yard. Let's say we're watering the yard, and they spray half the street, and the water's going down the street. Mm-hmm. You're wasting the water unless you can. There are ways in which you can maneuver it to where you're maximizing the coverage of what you're watering. But a lot of people don't. They just throw it in the yard, walk away, and then the street, the sidewalk, everything gets wet. You're wasting water, and you're not utilizing the tool in which you have available.
And that brings us back to watering or irrigating efficiently. So there's many different irrigation systems out there. Something like one of those rainbow or wavy sprinklers are not the most efficient irrigation. I don't know if I would even call that irrigation. It's probably just like a watering tool. So irrigation is typically done ideally with a drip system, or even something like the tree diaper or the Oya. Those are all forms of irrigation. But a drip system is nice. You take the drip hose, you put it right along the base of the plants.
Usually on 24-inch centers.
Right, and you can put drip. You can have the drip emitters. You can kind of tailor it to your garden, and it's ideal because it's getting right to the base of the plant.
Based on the type of system in which you decide to purchase, they will some of them in which you can adjust the amount of water coming out of the emitter, or you can maneuver the emitter around, but about a half gallon an hour at the root zone. So it's very controlled, very efficient, very environmentally friendly because it's not wasting water. How much water do you water a week, or how often? Usually, if you have a drip system, you can kind of gauge it, try it for a couple of days, run it for 45 minutes, maybe an hour. Because of that low amount of water that it's emitting, you're concentrating the water to the root system, so you're not wasting water. If you're using an above-ground sprinkler system, what you want to do is take a rain gauge and set out where the water is going on the ground, and then you can gauge, okay, I left it on for 30 minutes, and it acquired to be a quarter of an inch of water on the ground. So you can kind of figure that out. But really, if you're watering lawns, if you're watering ground, it depends on how much water you're needing or you're needing to put towards the plants. With our system, we use all of these. And it just depends on the actual unit of what works best.
Right. Well, we don't use the wavy sprinkler. But
No.
So then there's things like container size. If you grow in containers or pots, you need to keep that in mind that the smaller the container, the pot, the quicker it's going to dry out, especially on these hot days where it's dry.
In a container, you're going to water 2 to 3 times more regularly than you will in the ground garden. We want to keep the ground garden watered as much as moist as possible, but the containers dry out very, very quickly. They're above ground. The air can get to them much quicker. The evaporation occurs much more rapidly, no matter if it's a black container, white container, red container, yellow container. They're going to dry out quicker. And again, the mass of soil greatly determines the time in which they dry out. A gallon's going to dry out much quicker than 5 gallons. But still, what really stresses these plants out, and the lack of production in which these plants produce, is going through that cycle of wet for 2 days. Okay, I'm growing. Everything's good. Drying out. Stress. In survival mode for the plant. Watering again. Okay, grow. Then in a stress survival mode.
And that's the thing, is that when you're dealing with plants, when they are being stressed and then brought back and being stressed and brought back, that's not good for them. That's not good for their cell walls. It's just like us. If we were to not be feeling well and then we would just force ourselves to feel worse and then try to bounce back, it's going to take longer. So that's why watering efficiently, especially even in containers, is important.
And you're not how much water? Well, it depends on the garden, obviously, but it's not like we're using swimming pools full of water in order to water our plants. City water, people will say, well, what about the lead in the water? Soil has what is called a buffering capacity.
Especially healthy soil.
Healthy soil, which means it doesn't change the structure of the soil and absorb that toxicity. If you just pour bleach or Clorox or something like that on it, yeah, it's going to affect the soil, but the levels of toxicity that's in the water, it doesn't change that structure rapidly. It actually repels some of that.
Yeah, it's not enough. There's not enough bad things in city water to, as long as your soil is decent, healthy, to affect it.
And they, that used to be chlorine would kill the microbial life. We found out that is not necessarily the case, so we can use city water. There are water filters in which you can attach to your hose to reduce the amount of toxins in which you're putting into your garden or your containers. But the plants will adjust. We're talking fruit-bearing plants. If you're root crops and you have toxic soil, it will absorb the toxicity in the soil. If you have fruits like watermelons, tomatoes, peppers, they won't absorb that toxicity. They'll still be safe to eat. So watering, we should be doing it all the time. This is just some of the ways in which we water in order to help keep the plants healthy and hydrated and growing all summer long. Thank you for checking out the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show. For more, go to the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for full-length in-studio video and podcast replay of Season 1. Season 2 underway and added weekly. Tweet us at TWVG Show or hashtag TWVG to be part of the program.